The realm of Erenoth is an ancient and enigmatic land, riddled with long-buried secrets and plagued by undying darkness. And thus it falls to me, Taryn Dark-Wind, tiefling adventurer and keeper of stories, to recite these tales untold. This is the lore of Erenoth. After ascending to the throne of Kasrin, Emperor Asmundr greatly expanded the use of Kasrin's undead population, known in those days as the Undying. Fallen enemies were returned to life and set to work as slave labor, building Kasrin's structural wonders and serving the noble elite. Within half a century, the Undying outnumbered the living 3-1 in Kasrin's military legions. Cities across the Empire were maintained by a mixture of undead servants and dwarven slaves. Lower-class Kasrin citizens found themselves without work and without purpose, supplanted with cheaper, more effective undead labor. It was during this time that conflict first blossomed between Asmundr and his younger brother Eris. Eris feared the widespread use of necromancy would bring about the retribution of the gods. Kasrin, he believed, was built by the hands of mortal men. To leave its fate to the dead was folly. Asmundr told Eris that they would soon exceed the gods, and that they need not fear the divines. Emperor Asmundr, already centuries old, became obsessed at this time with extending his life even further. Together, he and his wizards developed a method which would bind the soul of a person to an object, preserving a mortal's life force and essence, even as the body departed the living realm. The costs of such a spell were high, but Asmundr was determined. At the behest of his emperor, Supreme Commander Eris left to wage war against the stone giants of the White Crags, who were led at this time by Ujaric Topple's Mountains. Asmundr desired the rare minerals in the White Crags, but Ujaric and his stone giants presented the first real military obstacle to Kasrin in 500 years. The legions broke against Ujaric's conclave like waves upon the shore. During the third year of unending combat, Eris sounded the retreat and recalled his legions to Kasrin. Upon returning to his homeland for the first time in years, Eris found it a changed and broken place. A once great and progressive civilization had darkened at the whims of its troubled ruler. The divide between the rich and the poor had widened, with slums rising up beyond the walls for those who could no longer afford Emperor Asmundr's heightened taxes. Non-humans were rounded up and forced into labor, exiled from civilized lands, or simply put to death. To his utmost horror, Eris also found that Asmundr had done the unthinkable. He had achieved immortality through the ritualistic slaughter of thousands of Kasrin's citizens, who had been put to the sword by the Emperor's undead legions. Asmundr had become Erenoth's first lich, an undying creature of immeasurable power. On the steps of Kasrin's great imperial palace, Eris confronted his older brother.
My emperor, my brother, do you not see the shade our empire has become? It is a hollow husk of our father's legacy, shadowed and broken. Dead men walk the streets while mortal citizens are left to live like dogs. This is not right, and I will not let it stand.
You will hold your tongue, Supreme Commander. You speak to the immortal Emperor. Do not forget your place.
No, brother, I have not forgotten my place. It is you who has forgotten your place. I speak to a hollow man who may have once been great, but is now little more than a talking corpse. This is not Kasrin, and this is not my brother Asmundr.
Eris gathered his mortal legions, united Kasrin's sick and poor, and fled the Empire. He established a stronghold in the floating landmasses known as the Wandering Isles, far to the north, and began strategizing a way to reclaim his father's throne from the deathly impostor who now sat upon it. It was at this time that Eris began a partnership with the Griffins of the Wandering Isles. This alliance would continue well into the next millennium, eventually manifesting as the Convocation, the Peacekeepers of Erenoth. Immortal Emperor Asmundr renounced his brother, gathered the Undying, and prepared for war. The coming struggle would come to be known as the Kasrin Civil War, pitting Eris and his mortal men against Asmundr and his undead horde. It is still the largest and most widespread conflict Erenoth has ever seen. Bloody battles raged across Erenoth, with neither brother relenting. The countryside burned, cities toppled, and hundreds of thousands died. For 4 years, the sons of King Willamar fought. The tide turned, however, when Eris struck a historic alliance. Eris met with Ujaric Topples Mountains of the Stone Giant Conclaves, sealing a pact with his former enemy to rid the world of Erenoth of his lich brother and his undying legions. The combined forces of the Wandering Isles and the White Crags swept southward, cutting a swath through the endless horde and driving the point of the dagger at Asmundr's military heart. Outside the walls of Kasrin's great capital city, Eris and Ujaric Topples Mountains called for Asmundr to surrender the throne or die. Immortal Emperor Asmundr, desperate and mad, with savages at his gates, did the unthinkable and changed the face of Erenoth forever. It's said that it was the gods themselves who sealed away the dragons, long before the elves mastered magic, long before men wielded iron, and long before the dwarves sculpted stone. Asmundr, immortal emperor of Kasrin and Erenoth's first and greatest lich, broke that seal. To this day, scholars are baffled at how Asmundr unleashed the worms unto the world once more. If there are records of the ritual, they likely burned with the rest of Erenoth. Millions died in an event known only as the Great Scorching. Eris and Ujaric Topples Mountains recalled their forces beneath a blaze of dragonfire. And meanwhile, Erenoth burned. When the smoke cleared, Great Kasrin was gone. Asmundr and his undying legions were no more. The meager survivors fled south to the town of Demeter. Eris died in single combat with one of the great dragons, toppling from the back of his griffin with a great black dragon claw embedded in his chest. And where once was a shining empire, only a blasted desert remained. What took millennia to build was lost in a matter of days to fire. For centuries, Erenoth smoldered, recovering from the devastation the dragons had wrought. A great kingdom was founded on the Wandering Isles, and it was named Eris. The brave people of Eris hunted the dragons down on the backs of their griffins, avenging the death of their founder. In time, the remnants of Kasrin's great empire forged themselves into the northern kingdoms we know today. The dwarven slaves built Bardoth. Impoverished humans established Talmor. And the nobility of Kasrin would move north to found the kingdom of Karn, among others. The Erenoth of today, our Erenoth, is a land forged in dragonfire and quenched in blood.